I've done it for a while, and I mean, we're getting a lot of. I had done Levon Mitchell Northam coming up later on in the program, Mid-Major Madness. Of course, ETSU is doing quite well, and I guess that's where. So yeah, things are really. Anyway, I love the conference, so we're going to see what you're going to do to get it so that everybody is going to love the conference. What do you think about that?
Employment Solutions works to match.
I'm having a little bit of a difficulty hearing you, Mark.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's because I've got. Yeah, I'm sorry. Don't worry about it. I'm going to come on here just a second. Forgive me.
Okay.
I self-produce the show. And so the commercials, sometimes go and play in the studio here. We're also doing this where we record this, and you can watch the interview on the Facebook page of the station afterwards. So there you go.
Okay, good.
So a lot of people are there. Okay. Since I believe it's 2006, John Iamarino has overseen a lot of stuff in the Southern Conference. The Steph Curry era at Davidson, loss of some programs, the revival and the renewal of some memberships with others. He joins us now, John Iamarino, here on Groundhog's Day on Tri-City Sports Now. And I guess to begin with, ETSU has really become the talk in many circles, certainly in the East, of all of mid-major basketball, and certainly here in the Tri-Cities. You've been the commissioner, as I said, since 2006. ETSU has a chance, possibly, to go undefeated in the regular season in the conference. And I wanted to ask you, how do you think, in watching this team, they compare with those great Steph Curry teams that, of course, one year made it all the way to the Elite Eight? Do you think that this is a comparable team this year to those great teams of the past that Davidson had in the Southern Conference?
Well, I think it's a different kind of team.
Sure.
We've still got ETSU is 11-0, so that means they've got 7 games left in the regular season. But they are extremely impressive. I had the opportunity to watch them 3 straight games last week. I saw them beat Mercer at home. Saturday they beat Wofford on the road here in Spartanburg. And then Monday I was in Charleston as they just got past the Citadel. And they are a very impressive team. I'm particularly impressed with the way so many players shuttle in and out, and there never seems to be a drop-off. They play terrific defense. The other thing that particularly impressed me in the Wofford game, they work the ball inside and get a lot of baskets underneath and in the paint, even though they have good length, but they're not a particularly tall team, other than maybe Peter Jerkin. But I've been impressed with the way they play, and comparing them to those Davidson teams, I don't think they have anybody on this team that's as good as Curry was, but I think they are very comparable. And when you beat everybody in the league, no matter how you do it, that means you're a very good team.
Well, of course, Steph Curry, I think you'd say, is one of the 2 best basketball players of this generation. I mean,
sure.
So yeah, I mean, it's no sin not to have a player like Steph Curry on the team. I mean, there's only been one guy in this past generation in all of college basketball, I think, that has had the talent of Steph Curry. Since LeBron James did not play college basketball. But John Iamarino, we go that, and I wanted for the historical and modern history, to compare ETSU to what a team out of the SoCon did that made national attention. I do have to ask, though, I mean, now, Davidson is no longer in the conference, neither is Appalachian State. You were the commissioner then. Why isn't Davidson still in the conference? Let's dig up some bones.
Oh, I think the biggest reason was they felt that they had an opportunity to join a basketball conference with a better pedigree than the Southern, the Atlantic 10, and particularly in the matter of getting an at-large berth. The Southern Conference has never had an at-large berth to the NCAA tournament. The Atlantic 10 has consistently, I would say, over the last 10, 15 years, they've gotten multiple teams in. And so that was a very attractive thing, I think, for Davidson, and not to mention the fact that, they don't have scholarship football, so they put the lion's share of their resources coaches into the men's basketball program and saw an opportunity to play in a higher profile conference with, like institutions that are basketball centric. The Atlantic 10 refers to themselves as a basketball centric conference, and I think that was appealing to Davidson. Appalachian State and Georgia Southern, I mean, they made no bones about it. They always wanted to play 85 scholarship football, playing for a bowl game as opposed to in the FCS as we do. And so when they got the opportunity, finally got the invitation from the Sun Belt, they were going to go. But they were always upfront about that, and I think that had been a goal of theirs for, many, many years.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. And I do know that a lot of ETSU fans, they're enjoying, how can you not enjoy a 14-game winning streak? But there is a feeling almost of, well, is that all there is? Because got to win the conference tournament to make the NCAAs. So as a conference commissioner, what can you do to make the SoCon into a multi-bid league? There's a lot of history here. Sure there is with the A10 or the CAA as well, but it's good history. Almost every program that has had some time in the conference, maybe the exception of the Citadel, but there was a time where they had some national prominence. What can happen? What can you do to help make the SoCon a two-bid league in the future?
Well, it's a very tough challenge, and if as fans look at the field each year as the committee picks the teams for the NCAA tournament, you notice that it seems like the at-large berths for mid-major conferences like ours, get smaller and smaller every year, and that's because the power conferences have the advantage of being able to play a lot of games against teams with high RPIs. They get to play them at home. We generally have to play games like ETSU did against Xavier and against Kentucky. They're on the road. We're not getting those games generally. We're not getting those games at home, which makes it tougher. What can we do? We talk about scheduling all the time, but you can't schedule your way into the NCAA tournament. You've got to win. You've got to win 2 or 3 of those high-profile games, and then, run through your conference season much like ETSU is doing. And, their RPI, I believe, is in the 50s right now, which is pretty good. They'll have, if they continue to win as they are, they'll be in the conversation for an at-large. It's still going to be, a long shot, but they'll be in the conversation, and depending on how things break, you never know. There might be that opportunity. We talk about it quite a bit, but it's the gap between the conferences at the top, the Autonomy 5 as they're referred to, and the rest of Division I, that gap only gets bigger every single day, and it becomes more of a challenge to try and, earn your way to an at-large berth. But we talk about it. The coaches obviously would love to see it happen. It would be a tremendous achievement for the conference. We just have to hope we find all the pieces aligned for us some year where it'll happen.
I may have asked you this last year, John Iamarino, commissioner of the Southern Conference, but is part of your role maybe, let's just say this scenario, okay? ETSU wins the Southern Conference tournament, but here's Wofford. Let's just say they beat Wofford. And Wofford, they've beaten 2 ACC teams. They have Fletcher McGee. It seems to me that Wofford, maybe not in the RPI, but Wofford's a pretty good basketball team. And I'm not convinced that they're not one of the 68 best teams in all of college basketball. So is there something that you could do as a commissioner to lobby the selection committee saying, look at our brand of ball. Look what, the UNCG did against NC State here. We're worthy of 2 bids. Is there something you can do as a commissioner to the selection committee?
Yeah, the selection committee assigns 2 of its members to each conference. And we have, as a matter of fact, I just had a conference call with them yesterday. We have 4 conference calls throughout the season, and we have an opportunity to talk about what's going on in our league, what teams to look at, who's playing well, where key injuries may have affected certain teams, and basically, not necessarily, I wouldn't use the word lobby, but we get to talk about our teams and explain, who's playing well and who to keep an eye on, so that those two committee members then go back when they meet with the full committee. They're basically up to speed on what's going on in the Southern Conference, and they can report out to the rest of the group. Of course, everybody knows about the RPIs, but the committee has an enormous amount of data in front of them. All the results, how teams have done against the top 50 teams in the country, how they've done against the top 100. There are all kinds of pieces of data that they scrub when they meet over that last weekend before the announcement on that Sunday, to compare teams from different parts of the countries that may not have played each other, to see, is a 14-4 record in the Southern Conference, how does that compare to a 12-6 record in another conference? So we do have those opportunities. The system is set up to allow each commissioner to have input with the committee, and we certainly try and take advantage of it.
You mentioned earlier in this interview, John Iamarino, Southern Conference Commissioner, scheduling and some of the difficulties. Of course, the SEC and I believe the Big Ten as well, if memory serves, they're going to go to 20 conference games, fewer opportunities for schools like, just using the ETSU model, schools like Tennessee and Vanderbilt that have played, in Kentucky this year, that have played ETSU in the past to play them again. How does the Southern Conference schedule in the future, therefore, with fewer opportunities against the big boys?
Well, it's a concern. Fortunately, I don't think it's become as big a problem in basketball as it is in football. When conferences add a conference game in football, that really does hurt leagues like ours. In basketball, it hasn't reached the point where our teams are not able to find opportunities to play those games. That hasn't happened yet, but you're right. There will be fewer opportunities if some of the power conferences add more league games. Our schools the coaches have great relationships. Basketball scheduling is generally done a year or maybe 2 years at the most in advance, not like football where they schedule 4, 5, 6 years down the road. So that hasn't really been a big problem for us, finding those kinds of games to play, and hopefully it won't in the future.
In women's basketball last season, ETSU, they had home games against Tennessee, and a program I still have a lot of respect for, although maybe they aren't what they were, say, in the early 80s, Old Dominion. And here's the question: why are those games easier to schedule for women's basketball teams than for men's basketball teams?
Well, I think the big reason is financial.
Okay.
If you're Syracuse University, and I don't know what they draw for their women's basketball games, but the likelihood is that if they go on the road, they're not forfeiting a big payday. However, the men's team, routinely puts 24,000, 25,000 in the Carrier Dome, and they're just not interested in playing, at Wofford or at ETSU or something like that. They're just not going to do it because they want every home date they can get, and I think that's the primary reason why you see men's basketball, fewer bigger teams going to play on the road than you do on the women's side.
Could something be done, let's just say, if you were going to try to schedule at ETSU, and I know that they'd have to make a bit of a modification to the mini dome in order for this to happen, but if you wanted to have another Michigan State, something like that, that could potentially draw the major crowd, more than what Freedom Hall plays. And I'm sure that's not the only big arena in the area. Bilo Center, let's just say, for Furman or Wofford. I mean, that could something like that, larger arenas in the vicinity or even on campus in the case of ETSU, bring in some of the more glamorous opponents to play the Southern Conference in the future, do you think?
Well, it might make it a little easier, but it's still not putting the money in the hands of big schools.
I see.
That's the primary reason that they want to play as many home games at Kentucky and Syracuse and Michigan and UCLA. They don't want to. They want to. They have, while they have a lot more revenue coming in from their media contracts than we do. They also have a lot more expenses, and so they're always looking to get as many home games as they can.
Well, let me then go with revenues, and I know that some fans I've heard have had, they're less than satisfied with the Southern Conference's TV contract, although we can now watch every game on ESPN3, and that's big wherever we are. They remember ETSU, the Friday night game on CSS when their days in the Atlantic Sun Conference. I can remember watching a Southern Conference game 2003 from Pittsburgh, ETSU and UNCG on ESPN, and this is 2003. This is after ESPN2. This is the modern ESPN era. My question is the Southern Conference, what can you do about the TV contract? Are you looking to expand it to try to get a better TV contract than what you have right now for more exposure?
Well, we're constantly looking to try and get as much exposure as possible. We would love to get more linear TV coverage or traditional TV, if you will, than what we have now. We have obviously come a long way in being able to have all the games available to all the fans, because that didn't used to be the case. But, there's not as much shelf space among the regional sports networks and ESPN, ESPN2 as there used to be, as they've now partnered with the SEC and with other conferences to put all of that conference's games on their various platforms. And there just aren't as many slots as there used to be for a league like ours. We think we're in a good position with ESPN3. As I said, all the schools have the opportunity to reach out to linear TV and can all cut their own deals for local games, and we do have some that do that. And we're constantly talking with TV networks to see if there's a package that might make sense, and we'll continue to try and do that.
So the old days, what you're telling me is I can remember when during the quote-unquote glory days of ETSU basketball, watching games on local TV with Norm Sloan calling color commentary and such from venues ranging from UCLA to Oral Roberts. You're saying there's nothing prohibiting if ETSU can get a local contract, if Furman can do that, more power to them, is what you're telling me right there.
They have the ability to do that now for their home games. Obviously, they don't have the rights for games on the road, but for games, the games played at home, absolutely. Our teams can negotiate with a local station or with a regional sports network if they can do that. But as I said, that's easier said than done.
ETSU in Tennessee is an example of when that happened last year. So,
that's right.
Yeah.
That's
Hey, one question I want to ask you. The Southern Conference, it does seem, with the departures of Appalachian State and Georgia Southern, they've taken a little bit hit in the football prestige in FCS. You've got a circumstance, I think, now where, it's been a while since a Southern Conference team has played for an FCS championship. I wanted to ask, could you by any chance change the football rules as a conference, now hear me out here, to try to make the Southern Conference perhaps more glamorous to recruits? What I'm talking about here is, say, timing rules. College football games are much slower paced than pro football games. Or even something like putting the hash marks, aligning them with the goalposts the way they are in the NFL, which might be more attractive to, say, recruiting kickers. Now, these are just the ideas of a sports talk show host and all that. But what can be done in the Southern Conference in terms of making their own rules on the gridiron that might make for a more attractive game to watch than some other conferences, even in an FBS brethren?
Well, I'm not sure. We would want to take that approach. I think first of all, we've had 4 teams go to the playoffs 2 years ago. We had 3 teams go this year. That's, we've had no period in our history where we've had as many as 7 go. So, it's true we've not gotten to the championship game in a number of years, but I think our football is one of the best in the nation. I think we're in the top 2 or 3 conferences in the FCS. North Dakota State, what they've been able to do is just amazing, and James Madison obviously deserves a lot of credit as well. But other than getting to the Frisco, to the championship game, I think our football has been extremely representative. I think coaches who play against Southern Conference teams know it's one of the best FCS conferences in the league. We're moving towards instant replay as most sporting events are, and I think this year we'll hopefully have just about all of our teams using instant replay at football. I think that's an important addition for the fans who now come to rely on instant replay at major sporting events. And so I think our approach is to continue to work with our programs, recruit the best kids we possibly can, both in the classroom and on the field, and continue to improve, build the rivalries that we have. And I feel very good about the last 2 football and basketball seasons that we've had here.
Well, final question, is the Southern Conference looking to expand?
I don't think expansion is at the top of our priority list. I think these days every single commissioner and every single conference are always keeping their eyes open and trying to monitor what's going on. But we've talked about this at some length with our presidents and chancellors, and the feeling seems to be right now we've got a good group of 10. There's a lot of, while we're a very competitive conference, there's a lot of camaraderie in the meeting rooms among the athletic directors, among the presidents and chancellors, and that's a good thing from my perspective. I think right now we want to build rivalries. We want to improve athletically and with some of the academic initiatives that we've undertook in the last couple of years. And, if an opportunity makes itself available to us, we certainly would look at it, but I don't think expansion is at the top of our priority list right now.
John Iamarino, it's been a while since I talked to you, since the last Southern Conference tournament where we said that was Christmas Day for the Southern Conference. You want to come on again during Christmas in a month?
Well, sure. If you want to call and I've got the time, I would be glad to.
Let's do that then. We'll see you in a month then. John Iamarino, Commissioner of the Southern Conference here on Tri-City Sports Now. Thanks for joining us, answering the questions of a league that I hope, and I always hope, is up and coming. Tri-City Sports Now, we're going to be back. A little talk about ETSU. They had a special guest at their 20-point victory against Samford. And also talk a little bit about the 30 for 30. And Rob Manfred wants to what's with the pitch clock. I'll tell you about that later on in the show, Tri-City Sports Now. All right, there you go.